Hey everyone, this is Steven with Collider. I am thrilled that Henry is here to talk about Wendell and Wild. I love your work. I'm so excited for people to see this movie. What are you've worked on a number of stop motion films, each unique but with your own style. And I'm just curious, what are you most excited for your fans to see with your newest work?
I just think tonally, this is its own world. It has a lot to do with partnering with Jordan Peele as a co-creative. He was a producer and co-writer, and his input the flavors he's added are really wonderful. And that's hold a little closer. That's what it's very unique. I think tonally, it really straddles a line between comedy, horror, fantasy, and drama. It's all those things at various moments. I'd like to think it'll be a little bit of a challenge, and that they'll take something away from it.
Well, one of the things that I found so cool and great about the movie is that it's a completely different type of story than you've done before and than anything I've ever seen in stop motion. Can you sort of talk about that aspect of the film?
Because of the fantastical elements, I did want to anchor the reality in actual real things, not going too heavy-handed, but a couple of social issues that matter to me and I thought would be a little bit of the bedrock of our story. As far as like who the real villains are, when there's monsters in a film, you assume it's monsters, but no, humans are always going to be the worst of the villains.
No, 100%. I actually think when I was watching the film and when it was over, what struck me was this is a film that like Walt Disney would have never made. And I didn't believe that they would get behind it. And I really want to commend Netflix for making the movie because I think that it deals with real stuff in the movie. And I think Netflix's streaming, I think, allowed this movie to happen. Do you agree with that?
Totally agree. Jordan and I didn't go out to that many places to pitch it because we knew it was not going to work for mainstream animation studios. Netflix was the place that said, we don't just say we're going to make a film. If we love you and your idea, we will make it. And they held true to their word. It took a little extra time. We had some delays with COVID and so forth. But you're right. I don't think any other studio would have backed us as fully as Netflix.
So one of the things that I find so fascinating when I'm watching a stop motion movie, because everything is so it's so challenging to make a stop motion movie that when you move the camera, how long a shot is going to last, all of these things require so much pre-planning and deciding where you're going to spend your time. So can you talk a little bit about, as a director, when you make those decisions, when you want to have an extended shot and when you want the camera to move in an extended shot, those kinds of filmmaking decisions?
You always start off just from pure creativity. And you storyboard everything to death, just like most animated films and many live action films. You pre-plan everything. You make the movie twice. Once in storyboards where you edit it together with voice, temp music, and so forth. But then there's the reality of translating it. What is it actually going to take to shoot something? So it's always very fluid, with a few exceptions. There's a few places where you need a grand shot. You need to put in the time to have a camera sweep in, circle around, move in close. Those become, sort of like key moments for the film to be big and have a large feeling. So everywhere else you can compromise. You can throw out reaction shots. You're always, every week it's throwing out shots, editing, combining, but you kind of go here, 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 here. These have to be grand and big, and we're not compromising. So you just sort of look at what's in the schedule and make room for those shots where the movie really needs them to be grand.
When people watch the film, which shot ended up being the one that gave you nightmares, or the one that gave animators nightmares to actually pull off, and how long did it actually take to do it?
Well, the first big shot actually is one I already mentioned. It's when Kat, who's our protagonist, goes to a graveyard and hopes to summon her parents. back, and it is a big long shot with her new friend in the background circling around. A storm rises up. There's supernatural elements. It it was the first big shot. It took weeks and weeks and weeks. At the rate we were going, we were never going to get the movie done, but it just took that long for everyone to get in tune with each other. I've worked with a lot of the same folks in these movies, but every movie has its own demands. So that was our tune-up shot. It was probably the longest, most complicated shot. Nightmares. Yeah, we all had nightmares. It wasn't just the animators. It was simply all these things had to come together, but it was our testing ground, our proving ground to get in tune with each other and how to pull these off. But yeah, it took forever. I can't remember how many weeks.
From beginning to end, for people that don't realize what it really takes to make a stop motion movie, how long ago did you actually start on this project once Netflix said, we're going to make this?
We actually did a test for Netflix. They said, we're going to make it, but we want you to do a test scene. And that was 4 years ago. And I decided as long as we're going to do a test, we should test something that could end up being in the movie, because it was going to be as laborious as making the real film. So we did something pretty elaborate, built real puppets, a real set. And it was almost 4 years and 4 or 5 months ago that we went into production, the test, and they loved it. And 90% of the test is in the film. It was that was always the plan. Like, don't waste our time. Let's make something that's going to be in the movie.
I think people don't realize, like, making not a normal movie, but a different, a narrative film that doesn't involve stop motion. You could conceivably get it all done in a few months, but usually it's like a year. And I don't think people fully realize, like, as you said, 4 years and months to make something like this. At any point, though, as a filmmaker, because I've spoken to a lot of directors, and they talk about when they're testing like a comedy, how they'll have seen the joke so many times that they almost think it's not funny anymore, and they need to be reminded at a test screening or showing it to new people, oh, it's still funny. At any point during the process, when you're spending this much time on something, do you start like second and third guessing yourself that a sequence that you originally thought was so good is just not as good as you remember it?
I'd call one of my greatest strengths the ability to go from the macro view to micro, back and forth. And normally I'm pretty good, but this one took longer than any other film. And I did start to lose it. I did get to a point where I felt like it's too slow, we got to cut it. I could have damaged the film badly, but I had people around me who I trusted to say, no, it's fine, you're too used to it. I actually don't mind that it takes a long time in these films, because I just think that's how we get our best ideas and refine those ideas. We get to live with them a long time. So that's what I love. But yeah, there was danger, especially in this film, because of it. Another year longer than anything else I'd worked on.
Talk a little bit about having Jordan Peele as a partner. Obviously, this is his first time working in this format, working with you. What did you take away from working with him, and that sort of like surprised you, or just could you talk a little bit about the collaboration?
Well, it started off in a good place because he was a huge fan of stop motion animation. I went to him and his former comedy partner, Keegan-Michael Key, because I wanted some of what they do so well in my films. I'm not known for comedy. There's comedic moments, but I wanted something unique and more. But he wanted to contribute more, and it turned out he loves stop motion. In fact, the logo for his company, Monkey Paw Productions, is beautiful stop motion animation. So it's not like a hobby. He loves it. He knows about it. I think he knows what its strengths are. So it wasn't so much he had to get in tune with it. He kind of understood it. It was more simply about the tone of the film, the nature of the humor, who these characters were, how he imagined the film being. And so many of his ideas were fresh and better, and I embraced them.
You have some very eccentric characters in the film, and could you talk a little bit about maybe if you have a favorite, or creating these kinds of characters in stop motion.
Well, I mean, as far as the eccentric characters, sure, we've got plenty. I think for the eccentric ones, it's Manberg the Merciless, who's a janitor, but who also collects demons. He's kind of unique in all the world. And later on in another interview, I'll tell you about his origin story. It's very interesting. Father Bests, who is voiced by James Hong, is one of my favorites. James Hong, who's over 90 years old, had so much creativity and vitality that he brought to this insane headmaster of this private girls' school. Eccentric characters, those are probably my tops there. But I love all the characters. I think that we did a great job at nailing down very specifics, who these people are. And Jordan was a huge hand in our leads, certainly him and what Keegan-Michael Key brought to the two demon brothers, who are the antagonists to the protagonists of Kat, who's voiced by Lyric Ross. And there'd be no Kat without Lyric. She totally, by the second session, she was telling me, no, Kat wouldn't say that. And I would ask, well, how would she say it? And she'd always know. Anyway, there's no characters I don't love. You got to love them all.
Completely. One of the things about most movies in Hollywood is that there is oftentimes an extensive test screening process, and you can make revisions and you alter whatever. But with stop motion, I would imagine it's a completely different process because, well, it's stop motion. How does it actually work in terms of when you made this? Did Netflix want you to test certain versions along the way? Or could you sort of talk about the process with stop motion and testing?
Yeah, I'm in my past, we never tested. I would test. I mean, I would show it to people I trusted and get feedback and make sort of adjustments. In this case, we kind of didn't do any testing till we were finished. And then we did one important test. Different age groups. Netflix has the means to connect with all sorts of audiences. And the main thing we found was what was working for different age groups. And I was very pleased that it's a PG-13 film, which is something Jordan and I insisted on, just so we had the freedom to go those places if we needed to, although we barely do. It's not especially terrifying or violent or foul or any of those things. But what we learned was that people loved it the most universally were like 10 to 14-year-olds, which was always a theory of mine. Kids always want to see something older, that they're drawn to that. But we made some good adjustments, just clarifying, simplifying, shifting some scenes around, reordering things, just to make it a little less challenging for the broader audience based on the feedback. So it was kind of last minute, but it was very critical, and I think all the adjusts really helped the film.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've spoken to so many people and they talk about like the test screening process and the pros and cons and stuff, but ultimately it's a tricky endeavor because you're making art and the art has to be paid for and you want people to enjoy it. And it's one of these, like, you know what I mean? There's the best is when art and commerce meet right in the middle. And it's just, one of those perfect marriages.
Yeah, I mean, you want the film to be, I always knew the film would work and that in time, it would definitely find an audience. It's better to find them sooner so that a company like Netflix will continue to take chances. The best thing about Netflix is that we don't have to live and die opening weekend as you do in traditional releases. But it does matter a lot. They know who's watching and how many are watching. And so if it doesn't hurt the film, I'm happy to make the sort of adjustments that might help that audience appreciate it the first time around a little more easily.
It's so funny because Netflix, so no longer are you thinking about the opening weekend box office. Now it's all about, am I in the top 10 movies on Netflix for like the first, week or month or whatever it may be. That's the only thing now I'm sure that you're thinking about.
I am thinking about that. And it's also features versus series. With series, people have time to get to know the characters and they get invested. And features, we don't get that same kind of time. It's like you got to grab them right away, get people to care about them right away. So it's a very different process.
Completely. I want to ask you a few different questions, if you don't mind. That if you've obviously been very fortunate and you've been able to make movies, and you obviously got Netflix to make this film, but is there a project that you have developed over the years that you actually struggled or have still struggled with trying to get the financing? Like, what is there anything out there that if you could get the financing for, you would make it tomorrow?
Well, I actually had a film underway after Coraline, which was, I'm very proud of the film. It was successful. I set up a deal with Pixar and Disney to develop something and developed several films. The one that we actually got underway and into early production was called The Shadow King. And there was a reshuffle. A guy named Alan Horn came in. And for a variety of reasons, the main one was that John Lasseter couldn't quite leave us alone because we were at a lower budget film. And, as long as we could keep it in that range, they were happy. But, because of who he is and how he works, he just couldn't help changing it and changing it and changing it. And the budget started to go up and up and up. And we reached a point where they were just uncomfortable and they shut it down. So I did get the rights back. And maybe I'd go back to that film and make it the right way. And but there's other projects as well. I have a favorite project, another Neil Gaiman project, which is it's The Ocean at the End of the Lane. It's been set up to be live action several times, but I had one opportunity to do stop motion with him before, and unless I hear otherwise from Neil, I think I still had opportunity as well. I think it's his best book, and he also would love to do another stop motion film with me.
The other thing is, A, the track record between the two of you is effing great, and B, I feel like all of a sudden, and maybe I'm just wrong about this, but I feel like all of a sudden Neil's, like, his work is starting to just get out there more over the last few years with Good Omens, with The Sandman finally getting made, and maybe that can help.
It totally. Neil learned the more he's involved, the better the work turns out to be. So it started with Good Omens and then Sandman, and so yes, he's a filmmaker now. In the past, it was sort of like weighing in but not being really as much in charge. But with him in charge, his stuff is more successful. And yeah, he's become a powerhouse in streaming series filmmaking.
I think The Sandman is phenomenal. Also on Netflix, everyone, which you already know. But it's just so great of a series.
Yeah, I can't wait for them to announce its second season. Have you heard anything?
I was just going to ask you. What's so interesting, and I just had this conversation with other people, is it's been in the top 10 since it came out.
Yeah.
And yet they have not announced the second season yet. And it's really making me crazy because it's so popular and it's so good that I'm like, please, like, make more.
Me too. They've got their team. They're just waiting for the go.
Yeah, I need it to happen. I actually think people will be very pissed if they don't make more because it's so good. But anyway, if someone has actually never seen anything you've done before, what is the first thing you want them watching and why?
I'm hoping that they'll be willing to take a chance that it's going to be a mix of something they know and something they've never seen before. I try to give a few anchor points and handholds to take them on a journey, but I want to hit them up with something brand new, something original. But
here's my question. Of your previous films, is there one that someone should start with first?
For different reasons, I would say Coraline is first because it's more me. And of course, Nightmare Before Christmas, it's Tim Burton and myself and Danny Elfman. But that's the order I would prefer.
What is it? I'm so curious because obviously everyone knows how much Nightmare Before Christmas, when it first came out, the reaction and what's happened over the many years What is it like for you now with how much it's in the popular culture and how many people have seen it and what goes on at Disneyland every Halloween and everything about that film?
It's remarkably wonderful to be a part of a project that has such long legs, such a long life. It was, it was seen as one thing originally. It was, we got to make exactly the movie we wanted. There was no real interference at all. Tim was the godfather. He had a great story, and the songs are wonderful. But we got to make the movie we wanted, and it came out, had a certain amount of success, seemed to disappear. It was sad, but then stuff started to bubble up, and then they started to make more merchandising and more and more. And eventually Disney stopped calling it a touchstone movie and it became an official Disney film.
Exactly.
They realized this could be Disney too. Look, it's sold over $1 billion worth of merchandising and it's still selling. So nothing better than a feeling of, for years, I'd be the stay-at-home guy when our grown sons were little, going out for trick-or-treating, and the kids would come by, and there was more and more kids dressed up in Nightmare Before Christmas character costumes. And, if their parents were with them, I'd say, hey, I got something to show you. And I'd lead them in and show them Jack Skellington on the sled with all the reindeer and Zero up front, because I have that in my house, and they'd scream with delight. Nothing better. It started out with Coraline too. It has a following, and it's starting to grow. Leica isn't Disney, so they don't quite know how to handle it and manage it, but I think they may figure it out.
One of the things that Disney has done recently is created all of these kind of short films, more shorts based on some of their popular movies and characters, especially for Disney Plus. And I'm so curious, have you ever thought about revisiting Nightmare Before Christmas or any of those characters for a short, for like at Halloween or Christmas, whether it be like a musical number or this is me spitballing, but I'm just curious if the conversation has ever come up.
The idea of a short has never come up in the past. A sequel had come up several times, and initially they always said, but it'll have to be CG. And that was a non-starter for me. It certainly was for Tim Burton. I think that Tim might be open to a short, but he's pretty much been against a sequel. He just, I agree that it worked out, and it would have to be so refreshing, such a new take to justify making a sequel. But a short makes good sense.
Well, and I say this as a fan, I agree that I love Nightmare Before Christmas, like everyone watching. I mean, I was going to curse, but I effing love it. And I don't want you guys to make a sequel unless it would be amazing. But I would love to see a short, because I don't feel that, you know what I mean? Like that could explore just a little moment and just get like a taste, like, seeing your friends again.
Yeah, maybe a short that's about Zero, how his viewpoint of the world, or a day in his life. I think that's a fantastic idea and doable. I predict Tim would back that.
I'm really hoping that this seed that I planted gets germinated, because I do think and that's another thing, even with Coraline, like seeing a character, or you know what I mean? You're revisiting, and they do that for a lot of different projects, especially now with Disney Plus and the streaming services, and and I think we even premiered a Halloween, like a holiday thing that they animated with some of the characters, like at a holiday party, where it was like all the characters from their movies sitting at a table or something. And I loved it, just seeing them.
I'm in favor. Sounds good.
Right. As I ramble on about this, I'm so sorry. Is there an IP that you have always looked at from afar that you would love? And I'm not talking about Neil Gaiman stuff, but is there any IP from afar that you've looked at and said, I would really like to play in that world?
Oh, there's been various things. Certainly I always thought the Addams Family world could work beautifully in stop motion animation, though I will say, from what I've seen of Tim Burton's take on Wednesday, I'm shocked in the best possible way. I think it might be the best thing he's been involved with in years. It's live action, but my God, they're going for the real hardcore Charles Addams dark humor in it. So as far as myself, there's nothing else I'd care to mention right now. There's things I've been intrigued by, other Roald Dahl stories. You know, for years I always thought the BFG would have worked best as a stop motion film, but you know, things come and go and they get made. So nothing else to share at this moment. You have any ideas for me?
No, sir, nothing I can suggest that you've probably already not thought about. My last question for you today. Obviously, you have been working tirelessly on Wendell and Wild, but you know the journey of making that film is almost over after you're done promoting. Have you already thought about what you might do next, or are you taking a long vacation?
I think I'm going to take a good break. You know, we made the film in Portland, Oregon, just like we did with Coraline. It's kind of the center of stop motion animation now. Guillermo made his film, like Soldiers On, but my home base is in Northern California, so reacclimating, and we have to see how it does. It'll be one of those, if the world responds favorably, strongly, then it's an open question. Maybe you know, I'll get back to doing something else, but it's a wait and see.
I completely understand. Well, I will say that I'm so thankful that you made the movie. I want to thank again Netflix for making the movie, because I know it's not, you know, it's more not challenging material, but more adult material, if you will. You know, anyway, I'm not going to say too much more. I'm just going to say you should definitely seek it out. Definitely watch it. Thank you so much for coming in. I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you apparently like the film, and I hope the world does as well. And I share your appreciation. Netflix, they stuck with us through some very tough times, and we got to the end.
I am very appreciative of what they have done. Thank you so much for coming in.